To your next flip video for our population unit. This one is about the epidemiological transition model. This is a direct correlation to the demographic transition model. And this is a way to look at the changing ways in which the ways in which the causes of death change as a country moves from stage 1 to theoretically stage 5 of the demographic transition model. So, to start us off, epidemiological is a word that's the branch of medicine that deals with disease. So, the incidence, that means the occurrence of, where they happen, the distribution, and the possible control of diseases. We also study other factors that contribute to health if you're an epidemiologist. So, epidemiological has to do with, again, causes of disease, essentially. And I just abbreviated here, but the ETM explains the changing causes of death as a country goes from stage 1 to stage 5, as I already mentioned. Population growth help explains the conditions of a society. So it makes sense, if you're in stage 1, the actual development of your society will look quite different than if you're in stage 5. And the development, of course, is then going to directly contribute to your living conditions, directly contribute to your available technologies, and directly contribute to your ability to control and to treat disease. So the conditions of the society explain the medical challenges that they'll face. Stage 1 is known as the pestilence and famine stage. Yikes. Pestilence is a fatal epidemic fatal sudden epidemic, that affects a large number of people, but often quickly subsides. So that's where the definition of an epidemic. Epidemic and pestilence are sort of synonymous terms. So these are going to be large-scale diseases that are sudden, that are fatal, they're serious, but they will ultimately subside. These deaths in stage 1 are caused by poor sanitary conditions. We're talking, again, these very, very underdeveloped societies. So we've got very little knowledge of sanitation, waste disposal. I already mentioned this, but human waste disposal is one of the single most important components of a healthy society, to ensure that there's no exposure, no cross-contamination between human waste and water. There's very little prevalence of hand washing or consistent bathing. This makes perfect sense when we think back, for those of you who've already taken World History 1, to the occurrence of the Black Plague. You've got the Black Plague, in Europe, people are not sanitary, waste, both human and just refuge, is not disposed of properly. There's just poor sanitary conditions that are going to lead to sudden and massive epidemics. And there's also, to some extent, you get the malnutrition, and that there are often inconsistent food supplies in stage 1. So you got people who are dying from malnutrition. In stage 1, these diseases largely affect the young. Right? These are going to be targeted towards the younger population, really a reflection of the fact that the society does not have an advanced healthcare system, so that's the most targeted population. Some of the examples that people would face in this stage 1 would be malnutrition, dysentery, malnutrition I already mentioned, inconsistent food supply. Dysentery, which can be directly related to the quality of the water supply. If you don't have clean water and you're drinking it, then that can obviously wreak havoc upon your body and your internal, especially your intestinal systems. Ebola, the original occurrences of Ebola here, that we've got these massive epidemics. A lot of it, Ebola can also spread through the bodies of the dead. So all here in stage 1, very traumatic. Largely, life expectancy is generally low. These are we've got diseases that are mostly affecting the young. As the country moves to stage 2, I changed the graphic because it's a little bit different. This is known as the receding pandemics. Okay? Receding, decreasing, right? But pandemics are those widespread epidemics that just affect a very large number of people. We're receding in this sense, but we still have significant disease. We've got an urbanizing population. So people started to move to cities as the Industrial Revolution occurred, pushing us into stage 2. So that urbanizing population, as a result, many of our causes of death in stage 2 of the ETM are caused by overcrowding. Similarly, if you don't have clean water, if you don't have or just simply you're around so many people in relatively unsanitary conditions, you're going to get things like cholera. Cholera is caused by poor drinking water. You're going to get the flu, which is the influenza emerged in this stage 2 period. Of course, still exists now, but in different strands. These are going to be really highly communicable diseases. That means highly infectious, highly contagious diseases. This makes sense, again, if we consider the conditions of the society that stage 2 exists in, that we've got an urbanizing population, people are living closer together. Now we see this affecting not just the young, but also intermediate ages too. So we've got the youngest populations and now some of our mid-age, I guess I'd say, population. So now we've got a greater percentage of the population affected, but not in a sense that that's a reflection on the quality the disease, but more so the fact that their society is developed in some capacities, and you've got people living longer, and the targeted population for these would just simply be different. Stage 3 and 4, and I'm sorry, my little star should have moved here. Okay, stage 3 and 4 kind of come together for the epidemiological transition model. By stage 3 and 4, societies have developed. They've industrialized, they're changing, they're improving their living conditions. So what that means is that people tend to live longer. If people are living longer, you and I, sad, I mean, it's not sad, it's just a fact of the matter, is that we're going to degenerate. Our bodies are going to naturally decline over time. And medicine by this point has improved enough to really help the young and the middle ages people. So that really what we see in stage 3 and 4 are diseases that are affecting the elderly. And in other words, people are living long enough to get these diseases. So things like Alzheimer's, Lou Gehrig's disease, certain types of cancers, not all, these are emerging, and these are it's not to say that these are expected, but they're certainly more natural for the elderly population that's living longer in stages 3 and 4 to get these types of diseases. What I'm going to now go to, and now note that I still said hypothetical. By stage 5, this is the hypothetical stage, what we have are re-emerging diseases. Now this is, I want to be careful about my phrasing here. When you have more ubiquitous, meaning present everywhere, medicine, and that isn't the case everywhere. Remember, not every country in the world is anywhere close to stage 5. But in places where there is more ubiquitous medicine, then sometimes people can actually, the being over medicated, consistently having access to medication and having antibiotics, actually fights natural biology, and that the biology, the nature will reemerge with different strands of diseases. So things like MRSA, which is a kind of the super staph infection, the swine flu, avian flu, we see these different diseases re-emerging as our medicine tries to fight them. But medicines like over vaccinating or over medicating sometimes is criticized as leading to these super flus, these super strands of diseases that are harder to fight with the medicine that we have. And that's not to say, I got to be careful. I don't want that to sound too panicky, but that is a re-emerging concern. Is the idea that as we have more access doesn't always necessarily lead to better. A better ability, I should say, to fight the natural course of action, which is that biology will emerge with different strands. So, stage 1 to stage 5. Here are your analysis questions, and that's it.